You gotta picture this. It's 2021, a courtroom in Oakland. The CEO of the most valuable company in the world is on the stand. And he's not just defending his company. No, he's defending a whole digital empire that he pretty much rules like a king. This was the moment the real world and the digital world crashed into each other. And the stakes, they honestly couldn't have been higher. So yeah, that's the story we're diving into. A modern-day corporate war we're calling iWar. This was a massive, high-stakes fight for control of the App Store, which is, the digital marketplace that literally lives in the pockets of over 1 billion people. This whole courtroom showdown, it was really the climax of a rebellion that had been brewing for years. You had Tim Cook on the witness stand, ready to defend the entire digital world he helped build, a world he was actually proud to call an economic miracle. And on the other side, well, you've got the guy who started this whole thing, Tim Sweeney. He's the founder of Epic Games, the creator of the global phenomenon Fortnite. It was a true clash of titans, right? You had the defender of this closed, perfectly curated empire versus a rebel leader who was demanding open access and fighting what he basically called an unfair tax. But look, this was never just about two guys named Tim. This was a battle for the actual rules that govern our digital lives. What was really at stake was control over the entire app economy, that digital space where 1 billion of us go to work, to play, to connect every single day. And more importantly, it's about who gets to decide what we see, what we pay, and what smaller developers are even allowed to create. To really get what this fight is all about, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to go back to the beginning to see how Apple built this incredibly powerful and pretty controversial digital kingdom in the first place. And here's the really fascinating part. Steve Jobs was originally against the whole idea of an app store. Can you believe that? He was worried about security, about control, but he was eventually persuaded. And man, when the App Store launched in 2008, its success was just explosive. Jobs himself said it was off the charts. Now, this success was built on one core concept, the walled garden. Think of it like this. Apple makes the phone, they make the operating system, and they run the only store where you can get software for it. They control every single thing inside these walls, and their argument is that it keeps the whole experience safe, secure, and super simple for all of us. So what's the price of admission to this beautiful garden? For any digital stuff sold, Apple takes a 30% cut. This 70-30 split, they borrowed it from the old iTunes Music Store, and it basically became a foundational, almost sacred rule for Apple's digital empire. And as you can guess, it became a major point of conflict for everyone living inside those walls. So of course, when you're the king of a vast empire, you've got to make some rules. And Apple's rules for its App Store, well, they very quickly became a source of some serious controversy. Apple's job as the gatekeeper led to some really strange and inconsistent calls. The infamous Baby Shaker app was somehow approved, then yanked after a massive public outrage. But then a Pulitzer-winning cartoonist gets rejected for ridiculing public figures. And dictionary apps were told to censor totally common curse words. It was a mess. And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures the whole mindset behind that gatekeeping. Steve Jobs was totally unapologetic. He really believed Apple had a moral responsibility to curate its platform. To him, the walled garden wasn't just about security, it was about values. But look, this control wasn't just some philosophical idea. It had real-world economic consequences. Back in 2012, the Department of Justice actually sued Apple and won, finding them guilty of conspiring with book publishers to fix ebook prices. It was a huge deal, and kind of an early warning shot that regulators were watching Apple's growing power really, really closely. And all that growing power, plus the super strict rules that came with it, eventually sparked a full-blown rebellion. And it was led by some of the biggest names in the tech world. The rebellion's general was Tim Sweeney. This guy started Epic Games from his parents' house and just built it into a total powerhouse. From the very beginning, Sweeney was all about building tools that empower other creators, and that whole philosophy was eventually going to put him on a direct collision course with Apple's closed-off world. And get this, Sweeney wasn't alone, not by a long shot. Other tech giants were also getting really tired of Apple's rules. Spotify had been fighting Apple for years, arguing that the 30% cut forced them to charge more than Apple's own music service. Even Facebook started getting nervous, worried that Apple's control could totally crush the small businesses that depend on its platform to find customers. So all this frustration, it finally just boiled over. Tim Sweeney and Epic Games, they decided they were done complaining. They were going to start a war. And to do it, they laid this brilliant, carefully calculated trap. Okay, so here's how it went down. It was genius. First, Epic secretly built its own payment system right into Fortnite. This let players buy V-Bucks at a discount because it bypassed Apple's 30% fee. Then they just flipped the switch. They knew Apple would have no choice but to ban the biggest game in the world from the App Store. The second Apple did that, bam, Epic filed this huge 60-page lawsuit that they already had written, launching a massive PR and legal war. And that brings us right back to that courtroom in Oakland. Because this whole fight, it was never just about a video game. It was never just about a commission. This is a generational battle over who controls the future of our entire digital economy, who gets to set the rules, and who really profits from the platforms that shape our whole world. So, at the end of the day, the question that the courts and regulators and really all of us are still grappling with is this. In the battle for the app, between the developer, the platform owner, and us, the user, who do you think should get to write the rules?